Okay, here we go. Welcome everybody. Hopefully everybody is able to hear me. Let me know in the chat box if that's not the case. Welcome to the Green Gap about attainable housing and sustainability. We're going to give everybody just a couple minutes to start joining. And then we're going to go ahead and get started. Just so everybody's aware, this will be recorded. We will be sharing out the recording afterwards. You're welcome to share that with anybody in your network and let us know. Go ahead and send us an email if you don't get the recording. I'll go ahead and put my email in the chat box so that you have our contact information. There will hopefully be some time for questions at the end of the webinar after we get through our discussion topics. You can go ahead and put any questions throughout the conversation in that Q&A box that you see, and then we'll get to them at the end. If we're not able to address them because we've run out of time, that's okay. We'll send you an email with any answers and get you connected with anybody that you need to talk to. Right, and just to introduce myself, my name is Maya. I had client success for Ecomedes. And I'm just going to be sharing the slides today, and I put my contact information in the chat box. If anybody has questions following this conversation, then you can go ahead and reach out to me. Happy to answer them for you. All right, and with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Kathleen Egan, our CEO, and she's going to get the discussion going. Right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Maya. Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon to all the designers, manufacturers, commercial real estate teams joining us. We're really excited about this topic today. My name is Kathleen. I'm the CEO of Ecomedes. We are a free tool for architects and designers who are looking for products that are sustainable. We also offer a service to help manufacturers and builders like folks like Casata to embed these kind of practices into their business. We think about it as trying to turn the sustainable vision into a reality. And I'm very excited to welcome our panelists here, Sean, Marcus, and Zane. I'm going to ask them to give a quick intro of themselves, a bit about their background, how they came to green building, and then I'll hop into the agenda. Sean, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sean McCollum, Director of Marketing and Communications at IceStone. Been here for about 5 years now, and IceStone is my first company that I've been in that's been a green, sustainably focused company. Prior to that, I've done marketing at several different industries. One of the places I used to work at was like an event venue, and that's where I guess you could say I got my first introduction in terms of learning about building structure and design, because you know, I like to learn all aspects of the company. So I learned about the venue and the building and how all of that came about. And what sparked my interest in IceStone was I love a good story, and IceStone has a great story, and that's kind of what led me to coming over to IceStone.
Awesome. Marcus, how about you?
Thanks, Kathleen. Hi, everybody. Marcus Hopper from Gensler. I'm based in San Francisco. Architect, senior associate at Gensler. I guess my role right now, currently, I oversee, co-manage what we call design management for the Northwest region. So that's everything from Vancouver all the way down to San Jose. So the group that I'm involved in it's what we call design synergy. So I'm part of the management portion of that group. But design synergy is basically how we work at Gensler, you know, our process, you know, how we, you know, what we put into our projects. So being part of that group, you know, design, what we call design resilience or sustainability is a very much a portion of how we put projects out into the world. So, you know, my passion for sustainability, design resilience is like kind of embedded within design management. So what I've been working on over the past few years is like how to embed the process of sustainability within like the management of projects, so that every project, not just the special few, has sustainability embedded from the very beginning. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Zaid.
Hi, everyone. Zain Mahmood. I'm an industrial engineer by training. I've worked in very large corporations like ABB, Allied, Signal, Johns, Manville, before I actually became CEO of an environmental technology company in Florida. That was many years ago. It was in the water treatment sector, where I really learned about doing good while making money, or doing good and having a good business. And that's where I learned about sustainable investing. I later on became CEO of a polyurethane manufacturer, and then have had a chance to work taking a company public called GCP Applied Technologies. And then I was president of, we were doing a roll up on the industrial chemicals or construction chemical side with ICP. I had retired about a few years ago when I actually met the founder, the guy who had the idea about Casata, Darren Levy. And we together, along with one other partner, formed Casata roughly about 16 months ago. We believe it's the first attainable housing product based on sustainability. And the first community actually launched on February 1st. 41 people are living in these units. And we now have about 1,000 unit pipeline in the Texas market over the next 2 years. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Thank you for having us, Kev.
Thank you, and congratulations on that launch. That's very exciting. Just to kick off the topic, when we got together with the group, we thought of the old adage, you could have it fast, cheap, or good. And with housing, it's really, you really need all three. We have a housing shortage in terms of units, and we also have lots of our community members who can afford the housing that is available. So there are, a lot of problems to be solved here. And of course, the risk is that with a rush to create more housing, that the sustainability of it could suffer. So for us to dive into this, we've got 4 questions for our panelists today, starting with the challenges they find, why they think this is important for their firms, a little bit about resilience, because despite our best efforts, changes are happening and we got to be ready for them. And then we'll end on what we see coming for the future, and would love to take questions from the audience toward the end for all the panelists. So please use the Q&A chat box, and Maya will moderate that, and we'll get to your questions. So without further ado, I'm going to start off with Marcus, and talk to us about the challenges within your role as Gensler as you sustainable housing.
Yeah, so one of the projects that I wanted to share with the group today on the call is an affordable. Well, it's housing for homeless, right? So I'm in California, right? And if you look up and down West Coast, probably in any large major city, there's a homeless problem. And so what we're finding is that there's this kind of intersection between all these kind of areas, right? Homelessness, right? The crisis there, climate change. So our group's been focusing on, this homeless problem in San Francisco. What's pictured here is one of our project sites at 33 Gulf Street in San Francisco. It's kind of near the old building department. But this was an abandoned building by the City College of San Francisco. And right now there's just essentially kind of a tent city in these 2 parking lots. If we go to the next slide. And so what we're looking at is like trying to develop, more of a humane and dignified way of living. And so in terms of housing, we're looking at these kind of pop-up villages, right? These tiny homes that can be placed on the site for anywhere between 18 months to 24 months. When the site is no longer available, this whole entire community would be moved to a different site, right? And so it's essentially looking at trying to bring dignity back to, people that are not, do not have the ability to have their own home. And it's also a stopgap. Like there's areas of there's funding coming in. This is an area where we can start to focus on, the housing problem from the scale. We've talked a lot about, so with this group, I've talked a little bit about what we've been doing at Gensler around reuse. And so, part of the sustainability issue, design resilience, is it's the making of things, right? But we also need to look at things that are already existing. And so in our project for Dignity Moves, we've been studying things that have been coming out of our projects, right? We have a lot of commercial office workplace projects that have some really nice stuff coming out of them as clients are making changes. So we looked at this kind of idea of a timeline and the challenges around reuse, right? It's all about timing. So, we've kind of started to create internally this documentation on how to assist our teams on finding things, we're finding things in our projects that can then be given to these projects the one that I shared about dignity moves. So it shows like a reuse strategy. We have like, usually a workplace project is about a year. And so we have a reuse strategy. We're identifying items that can be set aside for salvaging. We're identifying partnerships that would help us take these items from projects and bringing them to projects like dignity moves. And then, we have to think about like, there are these quick things that happen. Teams may not have a strategy or time for partnerships. We already are just designing this kind of network where it's essentially a hotline to assist teams on getting this stuff to projects in need and keeping them out of landfill.
Awesome, thank you. Let's go over to IceStone. What are the challenges you see with your guys' very, very unique products?
Right. Yeah, the biggest challenge for us is the resourcefulness of the glass that we get. It's obviously an important part of our product. It makes up 75% of our material. Our material is made from recycled glass, cement, and non-toxic pigment, and 75% of that is the recycled glass. And so I want to explain where we get our glass actually from. So people don't get confused. We don't get our recycled glass from residential areas that people throw the glass that people throw out every day in their homes. We get it from pre-consumer recycled glass. So we get it from commercial recyclers who get their glass from bottle manufacturers, glass manufacturers, windows, automobile windshields, all different types of glass. And the excess glass that these manufacturers have, or the defective glass that they have, they sell it to these commercial recyclers. And that's where we purchase our recycled glass from. The commercial recyclers, they crush the glass and they sand it down so that the edges are not sharp. And it comes in different sizes, everything ranging from sand-like to even thick. And you can see a couple of examples here. The challenge for us with the glass is sometimes we just can't get the particular glass we need anymore, either the color of the glass or sometimes the size of the glass, which is also a reason why we don't take glass from residential recycled. And so, for example, I have these two pictures up here of some of our colors that we've had to change due to the lack of glass that we were unable to get, that we weren't able to get anymore. So the one on the left here, Forest Fern, you see the old version here, and the new version, we wasn't able to get that large green glass. So we had to kind of change up our formula and try to make it new. So we ended up getting a darker green glass and incorporating smaller brown glass as well, and called it the new Forest Fern. And then the other image here to the right, denim moss was an old color. And we were able, same thing, we was unable to get a certain type of color green glass. So we had to change, we come up with another formula to try to get a similar color, because these are colors that people actually like. And so as far with the denim moss, we changed that to ocean grass. We just replaced we replaced it with smaller green glass, and the green glass is also slightly darker, and we just incorporated more blue glass into it. So that's basically the biggest challenge we have to face, is when we're not able to get certain type of glass from our suppliers. So then when we get into that type of situation, we just have to kind of come up with a new color. So we make it work out for the most part.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's talk about Casata and this beautiful microgreen home. What are the challenges with making this masterpiece?
So thanks, Kathleen. So when we started Casata 16 months ago, we believed, just post-pandemic or during the pandemic, we saw that there was a deep loss of connection and community, and that drove us, especially among the millennials. Millennials, as you know, as the most educated generation, will be the wealthiest generation one day, but their affordability of housing is very low because they're straddled with student debt. So we found this sort of niche where we believe people are ready to live independently, but don't want to live in an apartment, but are not ready to buy a house. There's another theory around that millennials like experiences more than gathering assets, or similar to gathering assets, that they're ready to gather assets later, but today they're gathering experiences. They want independent living, but a lot of amenities. So that's where the ethos of Casata came. We tested green. We found that our initial market research showed people like the idea of green, but they are not willing to pay for it. pay anything extra for it. If it's the same price for sustainable designs, they are okay with it. But if we say, hey, your rent is going to be $50 more per month and you have to pay $600 a year, they're like, no, I don't want to do that. That testing showed that there wasn't enough of an interest, at least in our focus groups that we did. We decided as owner operators of Casata that sustainability is going to be the core of who we are. And that's how we're going to build everything. So every tenant in these units actually pay a flat utility fee, and they get 100 megs of internet associated with it. So for a 400 square feet, single person, they pay $200 utility fee, and they get as much electricity and as much water they want to use. However, in their lease, it is that we want to educate them on their usage of energy and water. If they use more than 25% of the average use of a similar unit, then we have the right to go and change their fee. So they're basically going to get a report card every month on their utility usage. We believe this reporting actually helps educate people on their own water and carbon footprint down the road, or energy footprint down the road. So we took a slightly different approach, that we said we need to do things to educate our residents that they can be a part and partner with us to reduce their energy and water footprint. And that's why we're working with Ecomedes to help us select the most efficient building materials, both from an energy and water standpoint.
Got it. And I'll just stay with you, Zain, on the next question. So if your customers weren't willing right off the bat to pay more, what was the motivation for your team to make this part of your brand? What do you think drove your team into all the many decisions you make to make this community more sustainable?
We just believe, number one, it's the right thing to do. Number two, demographically, we believe that the target segment we are targeting eventually will rise up, and they will be, once they understand and are educated that the long-term costs are lower when you are sustainable, they get it. It's a very long-term play. It's a strategic long-term play. The third part is competitive dynamics. We know that micro housing is going to be a big part of housing going forward. We believe 5% of any rental stock of any mid-market city can be micro single family rental, like we have developed. That equates to 2 million units in a 44 million rental unit in the United States. That's over 2 million units. We are only trying to build a couple of thousand units in the next couple of years. We believe this will give us competitive advantage. This will be good for our tenants, and this will be good for our investors. So it's a win-win-win for everybody, and that's why we chose it.
Zain, can you maybe just also touch on B Corp? I believe you guys have done B Corp. Does that factor into that strategy?
Right. We have applied for B Corporation status, and we have made sustainability and environmental impact our core focus. Again, we frame ourselves as attainable housing, not affordable housing. Affordable housing, as you know, has a separate status within the financing structure. This is attainable housing. Our average salaries in the community in the South Austin market is a little over $50,000. A median salary, median age is 35, range of age is 22 to 74. So we are targeting that particular group of people who want slightly better than apartment living, an independent courtyard, an independent balcony, and independent living. And that's why we picked this.
Got it. Thank you so much. Marcus, how about you and the Gensler team? What is the why?
I think the why is, so I think is Zain's comment about the pandemic and community and kind of people coming back together. So what we've been seeing is this, say just within cities, right? This idea of like how to create like measurable impact and contributions to the places that you live, right? Your surroundings. And so, as a design firm, right, we have, again, this large portfolio of clients and work. And so again, my focus, so within the kind of design synergy group that I talked about, my focus with a smaller team at Gensler has been around reuse. Like we're just kind of focusing on that. And so with these materials that are coming out of these projects and these communities that we're trying to build, this project that we're working on with Dignity Moves, that's pictured on the right is one of the pods. One of our sister projects in Santa Barbara, we have these two projects, San Francisco and Santa Barbara. That's like the first, the prototype that was created, and there was a ribbon cutting down there. But this idea that, look, we're creating impact here. We're doing it through the materials that we're saving from projects. Some of these materials have, like IceStone, they have things that are, were made with like care and sustainability in mind, and we're putting them in a place where they're needed. And so, just again, from impact, the cost of like housing for people that are homeless, right? This is a great goal, right? This is something that we can kind of share across the firm and start to tell a story about, the why of, why we're doing this work and why it's important for design firms to do this as well. So maybe on just community impact, one of the things that we were looking at is like, again, we established this kind of like platform internally called G-Salvage. And so it's allowing teams to start to share this information. We have a prototype that we're working on right now, but the idea is that, these materials are coming out. Teams are starting to identify where these materials are. We're working through partnerships to start to get these materials from point A to point B. So this particular project, we had a project in San Francisco that was items, furniture, some building materials were coming out of those projects, and we were able to identify a recipient, which was a nonprofit pro bono project from our Newport Beach office, which was building a school, a community down in Baja California. So again, stuff coming out, right? Rather than going to landfill or some sort of waste stream, we're taking these items and bringing them to projects in need.
Amazing. It's a win-win. Sean, how about with IceStone? What's the why for you and your management team? And what are your learnings or changes that you've seen over the journey?
Over the journey. Why? Well, it starts with our foundation, all the way from the inception of the company back in 2003. The founders of the company, they were already mission-driven, sustainably focused entrepreneurs. They had businesses before IceStone with the same type of mentality. And what happened was they found like-minded investors as well. People like Dalla Mania, who founded Tweezerman, Ben Cohen from Ben and Jerry's. So they found investors who had the same mentality, and they all, invested into IceStone, and they all had the same mission-driven, socially community awareness, social conscious sustainability goals. And I think our identity falls back to that foundation. And real quick, I'll explain how IceStone was founded. There was a previous company who made the same type of material made from recycled glass and cement, but they could never get the formula correct. So they were never able to put it out into just to sell it out to the public commercially. And so they ended up ending the company and putting it up for auction for sale. And the founders of IceStone, that's when they bought that company. They rebranded it, renamed it IceStone. They took their time researching and doing several testing and until they got the formula correct, where they can put it out for commercial use. And that's how IceStone was actually born. And I think from that foundation up to today, that's what keeps us motivated and driven to keep this sustainability factor going. And also getting the feedback and testimonials from our customers and our clients, all of the positive feedback that keeps us motivated and keeps us going as well. And all of the several awards we won over the years, it lets us know that we're doing something meaningful and something that is great for the environment as a whole. And also, I think the government just started, the federal government, they just launched a partnership with state and local governments to start an initiative to build more high performance sustainable buildings and homes. So we can see in real time how the whole sustainability factor is progressing more and more. So I think that, I think those are good reasons to keep companies like us going and motivated to keep doing what we're doing. It shows us that we're doing something good.
Awesome. And Ashan, I think you guys are also a B Corp, is that correct?
Yeah, we're a B Corp as well. We're actually a founding B Corp, meaning that we were one of the first original 50 members of the B Corp family.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, guys. Next question is a little bit about resilience. And, as we're getting more data in, both on the climate side, on biodiversity, and other environmental factors, it appears that there's some damage done. And we're all working hard every day to try to stem that damage, but nonetheless, new design choices have to take into account this the change that is coming and the resilience. Zane, maybe you could start us off in terms of how the climate change that is happening that we can't prevent may have affected your design choices or location choices.
Sure. So first of all, our first community is in Austin, Texas. You may know, if you are familiar with Texas, last year in the spring, Texas got a once in 100-year storm, and the entire power grid for Texas was down, except for San Antonio. I think everything was down. And there's a whole bunch of reasons, political and non-political, associated with it. Irrespective, weather played havoc with Texas. And since our next 4 or 5 communities are Texas oriented, one of the things we are looking at, in addition to doing 100-year flooding and other types of studies that we do anyway for all our communities, we are seriously looking at 2 different things. One is, can we bring in more solar to the community? Because solar was not the original part of our design, even though sustainability was a big part. The way we were approaching sustainability is bringing in the most the greenest building materials with the help of Ecomedes, do that. But now we are starting to look at solar panels, thin film, all types of technology that will bring in a more lower cost solar option. But in order to build climate resilience, one of the things we're doing is we're looking at every one of these properties as a commons area, which works like a co-working space, gym, pool, entertainment space. But that area will also serve a dual purpose. In the event of a massive storm and power outage, we would like for our residents to have a place where they can take a sleeping bag and sleep with heat, if it's a storm like that, and having somewhere to charge their cell phones and maybe take a shower, but having a place to go to in the event the main power grid fails. So we are looking at resilience from multiple different angles, from a regional angle, from a power angle, as well as creating some sort of a safe space for residents in the event of a major catastrophic thing that brings down power for some time.
Some scary thoughts, but better to be prepared. Marcus, how about you guys on the resilience? You guys have a whole practice around this. Can you share some of the things that are most important to your clients and where your firm is going?
Yeah, and I'll send maybe if I'll send the link to the design. So we just issued our design forecast. This is what's pictured here on this slide. And it goes through just like kind of the idea, like a larger idea around resilience and kind of the designing futures. And so in terms of design resilience, we have a lot of things that we published. If you go to our website, you look under research, you'll find a lot of these like things that are downloadable, right? Reports, there's blogs. And so I think for us, it really started with our GC3 initiative, which was really like our call. It kind of ties back to like AI 2030. And like these are the goals that we've set for ourselves. How are we going to accomplish this? And so GC3 is kind of broken into 2 parts. One is like the operational piece, like the design of buildings, right? The energy efficiency portion of a building. How, if we're constructing a building from ground up, how is it sited? Is it sited correctly? Yes, it has to be, right? And the other part of it is the making of things. And so that's what this probably group is part of, right? It's like like what are the materials? What are the things that we're putting into projects? What are they made out of? And then the piece to that, right? The kind of the making of things, because in order to hit the goals for our that we set for ourselves for our firm, GC3 initiative, is right, we're going to have to think about reuse, right? We can really design some great projects and specify some amazing materials to go into those projects, but we have to also think about what's going to happen to those materials like 10 years from now, right? And so this idea around reuse, designing for disassembly, again, if you go to our website, we have some things you can download on some reports around that, but that's kind of our thinking, Kathleen, around, you know, design resilience and how we intend to move forward.
Awesome, thank you. Now I want to end on looking ahead. And there are, because we have this great combination of a manufacturer, a world-class architect, and a builder, you know, different perspectives on what's important as you go forward. So let's start with Ashan and help us understand, you know, what is IceStone doing for the future, and what gives you cause for optimism?
Well, I think a lot of manufacturers could try to follow our lead as far as not just being sustainable in their product, but also being sustainable in their overall business practices. So, for example, the images you see here is our images of our factory. We have a lot of, you know, we try to be sustainable in all aspects of our business. So you see here a water tank. It's a recycling water tank. We use a lot of water in two parts of our production process, which is the calibration process, which is we sand down a couple centimeters of our material to make sure that they're all the same thickness and that it's even. And in our polishing machines, we use a lot of water in those two instances. And so we recycle that water and filters out any debris and dirt, and we're able to reuse it. So we're able to reuse about 90% of the water that we use in our production process. And the image in the middle is our skylight. We're a daylit factory. You know, we try to use as little light as possible and use natural light. Our employees, they come in early in the morning, about 7 o'clock, to take advantage of the natural light throughout the day. As some of you may know, in the East Coast, you know, it gets dark in the wintertime around a little bit after 4 o'clock. So our guys come in early to try to take advantage of as much natural light as possible. And the last image here, the third image, is our kiln. Basically, it's a large oven. We use it to cure our material and harden our material to get out any humidity and moisture, you know, and we keep it overnight. It's basically like a large oven, and it's steam powered. And those are just some of the aspects. Also, you know, we try to work with like-minded companies and vendors that are also sustainably focused. And picture here, Heineken. I think when I say working with like-minded companies, working with like-minded A&Ds, the people like the Genslers of the world who can bridge that gap between connecting manufacturers with brands that have the same type of focus. As you can see here in this image, this is a project we did recently with Heineken. Heineken is also a very sustainably focused company, and we actually did a custom color for them. It's not exactly the green Heineken glass from the Heineken bottles, but we tried to find a glass to get as close as possible, and so the result is what you see here. And you know, we're actually thinking of making this a part of a color that's part of our collection. So all the listeners, if you think this is something we should add to our collection, just put a yes in the comments. But yeah, I think, moving forward, I think manufacturers, they should just all work with like-minded companies, try to be as sustainable and zero waste as possible. Another thing we do is we don't let any of our material go to waste. So if there's any countertops or surfaces that get messed up in production, like maybe cracks or anything like that, we're able to just cut off that piece, and we're able to still sell it for people that might want smaller projects, things like bathroom vanities, custom desktops or tabletops or bookshelves. You know, it's endless the ways you can use IceStone, even though it's mostly used for countertops. You know, I've seen it used for plenty of other things like windowsills. I've seen people use it as lamps. But yeah.
Awesome. You got a nice bravo from one of our audience members on that approach for being so integrative. So thank you for that. Okay, Zane, you know, as you look to the future and building the next community, what are some of the keys that give you hope for the future, and what can the manufacturers do to make your job even easier? to make these microgreen communities?
Absolutely. I think, we have already announced our second community, which is breaking ground in the summer. We already have land acquired for it. It's a 32-acre piece of land in San Marcos, Texas. It'll have 200 units. And then we have land under contract in another one in Austin, one in College Station, and we are in due diligence in Dallas and Houston. So we'll probably have at least 1,000 units in the pipeline in the next five months. So our intention clearly is to continue to build very much with greener building materials. We are partnering with Ecomedes to help us select those building materials. We are also directly reaching out to large, innovative manufacturers. We are building relationships with them strategically to look at how they can give us access to futuristic technologies. There is, just like Ashwin mentioned, there are new things out there that we're just not aware of. It's the building material space, as you know, is large and very complex. Finding materials that are both sustainable, number one, number two, attainable for us, because we can't really pay $1,000 more for something that doesn't have some additional operating benefits. If it has a long operating benefit, in the sense the total life cycle cost is understood. I'll give you an example. One of the big areas we focus on is water delivery into these units, because every unit is monitored and measured. We want to make sure, and if a faucet is leaking, we can send a maintenance person in to fix it quickly, because that's part of our environmental ethos. What we want to do is understand the measurable long-term full life cycle impact of this particular equipment, because once you install a faucet or a shower, it's there for years, right? And it's using so much water on a consumer basis. So any educational apples to apples comparison on cost and quality of affordability, especially for developers like ours that we are looking at long term, would be very useful. I think the title of your forum was affordability as well as sustainability. I think these are not mutually exclusive. It's how do you design with both in is the key. I think when new products come in, manufacturers often try to charge a really high premium because it's premium. I think the sooner those things become more mainstream, it becomes, we can bring these to our units faster, because we're going to be building thousands and thousands of these units, and we have to return shareholders' money as well. So there's a return on investment expected from us. We can't just buy the most expensive product. We need something that's more attainable for us as well to build the green attainable housing that we are looking to build.
Great. Zain, one specific question from the audience was, are you using air heat exchangers as part of your design yet?
Not yet. No, our first community was built with standard units. Interestingly enough, micro units are 400 to 1,000 square feet. These are very well designed, beautiful. So we took standard units out of the market, upgraded them with high efficiency and everything. So there was nothing like that available with air exchangers in that. Now, as we are doing our own proprietary design, we are definitely looking at that. We are looking at the whole air exchange system. We're looking at low voltage architecture as well. So there are multiple things we're looking at. It will be iterative. We'll keep incorporating newer and newer technologies, because that's part of our proprietary knowledge in this. And we believe we will be the most efficient and energy efficient and sustainable micro housing available in the market, relatively soon.
Great, thank you. Okay, Marcus, as you look to the future, what would help with your reuse project and vision, and just overall helping your team? What could everybody do? Because you guys are the linchpin in a lot of these decisions.
Yeah, and so I think this idea of like, well, what Zain was talking about, the life cycle, right? And so a product is produced, right? And what we're finding is like finding out where it is, what is it, how can it be reused again? There's a lot of time, and sometimes it's painful to try to figure that out, right? That takes time, money, and people get frustrated. So what we've been trying to do in terms, again, looking at reuse as a viable option is like, how do we start to map this out, right? What is the journey map for a particular project team? It's not going to be linear, right? It's going to be, every team's going to have a different kind of like take on it, but at least trying to map it out and trying to help teams through this kind of journey. So like things to consider at the beginning, questions to ask. If you start again, if time is going to be the essence, right? So like having a strategy, every project should have some sort of reuse strategy. Looking at the materials that are currently existing. There's going to be a discovery phase and a partner phase, right? You're going to have to kind of go outside of your typical partnerships to make this work. There'll be things to consider, and like there's a project vision and there's things that you have to consider. So again, that's where you're going to need to be flexible. That's what we found when we're looking at reuse. And this is, again, when I talk about reuse, it's beyond just like reclaimed wood, on a wall, right? Not a finished material. It's more about like, it was a door, it's now a door again. And so as we start to look at that, the kind of performing and delivery, it's around designing for disassembly, right? It's like we need to start looking at how we place things into projects and thinking about a project team in the future that will need to take it out. And so that maybe that goes back to the tracking data, where if you know what you're taking it out, a team 5 years from now, 10 years from now is taking it out, they know what it is. They have all the project data associated with it. It could be a material passport, whatever you want to call it. There needs to be some sort of tracking data there. And then what we found is that once you start to have these successes, you really want to like communicate it. You want to like broadcast it to the world so other teams can learn from it. We want to document. There's the metrics piece. So that's really what's going to be telling the story about like, what did we save here? What did we do? And it goes back to the measurable impact piece that I had talked about earlier. But this idea is that you start at the beginning, think of it as like a game board, you have your journey, you go back to the start, and you kind of develop the process going further. So this, what we're showing here is like, this is kind of an internal thing that we've started. It's kind of a draft. We're still obviously evolving it and making it more useful to teams. But that's kind of our view of the future right now, how we're seeing things kind of roll out.
Great. Okay, well, we are going to move into the Q&A section. On the slides, you'll see Maya and Haley's emails. These are our client success team. So if folks have questions after this session, please do follow up with them. I'm going to hand over to Maya to take us through some of the questions that have come in. And if anybody has questions, please enter them in the Q&A box now.
Thanks, Kathleen, and thanks everybody. That was some really great discussion points, and I really appreciate your input. It's a good thing that we have some time left over because the questions are rolling in. The first one is a suggestion, if none of you are familiar, is to look into Good Future Design Alliance. Not sure if anybody's familiar with that. Marcus, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, I know Katie. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And then, Ashan, this question is specifically for you. What would be needed to incorporate post-consumer glass into your product? And do you think that that is feasible in the future?
Post-consumer, that's something we never really looked into it, as far as I know. I think it goes back to having enough glass to be able to use. Like I said, one of our challenges is not being able to get certain glass. Although in my experience, that hasn't been too often. But yeah, if there's a way for post-consumer glass where we can get a consistent amount of it for what we need to produce, I don't see why that would be an issue, but that's something we have to look into. And I'm pretty sure they've probably looked into it in the past, which is why we were never able to do it. But, times change. So it might be a good idea to look back into that again. Thank you for that question.
Great, thank you. And Zane, this question is for you. What type of backup power is Casata using in your common space? Many are struggling, especially on construction sites, film sets, et cetera, with backup power systems that don't use fossil fuels.
So, unlike film sets and things like that, our amenity center is a static, square footage with a certain amount of power and water need. So we are studying solar. And in one other site, we're actually studying thermal power because that site actually has access to hydrothermal power generation. So we are looking at both. We are trying to make them as efficient as we can, but we believe it's also a part of our signature to the community to be able to say that our amenity space is completely solar powered. The question is battery capacity and storage, and each state has their own requirements for how much power can be sold back, and you have to sell power and bring it back. So we're going through all those calculations as we speak, at least in the state of Texas, and then hopefully there'll be more framework for us to work with.
Okay, and that tees up the next question perfectly, which is for both Marcus and Zane. Are you using passive solar design for energy and material efficiency? How beneficial is passive solar and how feasible is it? Let's start with Zane and then we'll go to Marcus.
I'm not really familiar with passive solar, so that's something I'd have to study up, but maybe Marcus can enlighten me first, and then I can tell you that we have not considered it so far.
I have to look at some. So I know that some of our we did like a morphable, like it's in the thing that I think I put in the chat. We studied an office building that was like kind of the future office building, right? And we actually just published one, I think, in recently for a science building that was all mass timber as well. And so I need to look back at that. I think the team was starting to study some of those, like, again, this goes back to the operations of the buildings, looking at solar, passive solar for that type of building. But that's not my particular expertise. There are a lot of folks at Gensler that do like focus on that, and that's probably not my wheelhouse, but let me circle back. I could probably find those reports.
While you were speaking, Marcus, I just looked it up on Wikipedia, and clearly we're not studying passive solar yet. If there's good ideas of where passive solar systems are available, or if we can work with somebody, we'd be very excited to do that.
Hooray for Wikipedia. It's such a good tool. The last question that was submitted so far from Roberto Valle, I've got to say, is one that's so close to my heart, about the strategies for avoiding toxins. And the toxins are coming in new forms. Not all are regulated by the EPA. We're just getting the data in about 8-chain carbon molecules and PFAS. And I just read a report about ski wax, like some of the forests where people are skiing under the starting gate is like a hazmat zone from all the ski wax and the polyfluorinated compounds. So how do you guys think about the toxins entering the spaces that you're building? And what strategies are you employing to stay ahead of it?
Well, I know for IceStone, we don't have a lot of ingredients or materials, very simple. So we don't have to worry too much. And we don't really add anything new to our material. So we don't have to worry too much about any additional toxins, although we do keep up with it. And, we have all the information on our website, and you can find it on Ecomedes as well, our HPDs and things like that. We're very transparent with the contents that's in our material. But with IceStone specifically, our material doesn't contain any VOCs or anything like that. And we're just made up of 3 core ingredients: recycled glass, cement, and non-toxic pigment. And so, it's really not too big of an issue for us as far as these new toxins that's coming out, because our material is very simple as far as the ingredients.
Okay.
For us, again, we rely on partners like Ecomedes to educate us on the sustainability side of it. We are, because of most of these newer materials that we're looking at, we also look at it from a health environmental standpoint. As long as there are declarations and transparency, we are definitely picking and choosing, because we have pretty much every building material in every unit that we use. Like for paint and others, we are definitely looking at low VOC or no VOC type of products.
Yeah, and I think for Gensler, so we actually have a product design team at Gensler. We work with manufacturers that hire us as clients. So that group is connected to, again, this GC3 initiative in what's in the materials that we're specifying, in terms of a health aspect, healthy materials aspect, from an embodied carbon aspect, right? And so all that's collected and then sent out to our teams on the ground, right? Our design teams that are the ones that would be specifying these materials for their projects, right? For if it's an interiors project, a residential project, a commercial office project, right? So all of those things are then informed to our team. So I think that's where we're addressing it. There is, again, Gensler's it's a large company, and so we have a lot of very talented people that specialize on, certain focus areas. And so that group is, again, it falls within our product design group and our design resilience group. And again, I could definitely put the team, if you're very interested in that, or you want to understand a little bit more about what Gensler's doing specifically, I could put you in touch with some of those folks that are very informed about like the ins and outs of what we're focusing on as a firm.
Okay, we have one more question that has come in, and since we have a few more minutes, I'm going to go ahead and ask it. Do any of the projects involve radiant systems for heating and cooling? What are the perspectives on energy footprints from an HVAC perspective? Not sure if anybody has good input on this or any perspectives or thoughts on this. Maybe Marcus or Zane.
So the project that I shared doesn't have it. It's the Dignity Moods project. I mean, that project was really about how do we start to build these things safely, right? There was all kinds of like code things that we had to kind of look at very very closely, and we partnered with each of the cities, city of San Francisco, city of Santa Barbara, to understand like how are we building these things and what were they made out of. And so it's kind of, those two projects are essentially the prototype projects, like beta tests. And as we're moving forward, the client's looking at doing this throughout the state of California. And so our client's talking to like almost every mayor in the state of California, every city. So as we start to roll this out, we're working with the prefab manufacturer, all of the engineering and consultants that we've been working with to try to do this better, right? Every time it's going to be, okay, this is what we tried. These are the hurdles, barriers that we had. And now we're going to look at trying to like, do this better. So from the heating aspect, we haven't talked about the radiant thing, but we have to make these things efficient as much as possible within a cost structure. So I'm sure that will be studied later, specifically even for like the larger community buildings and dining hall buildings for the larger community.
Okay.
And we have not studied this at all. So.
All right. Well, I really appreciate everybody's input. We are going to give everybody just a few minutes back in their day just to answer some of the questions. We will be sending out a recording of this. Please feel free to connect with any of the panelists on LinkedIn, reach out to them if you have any follow-up questions. I want to thank our panelists for all of your engagement today, as well as Kathleen. Thank you for doing such a wonderful job facilitating. It's been a wonderful conversation. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day and week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Come visit us in Austin.
Thank you.
Come visit us in Austin.
Visit all our panelists and their websites and their work. Thank you guys again for joining, and thanks all to the audience too. This is a strong community, and we're really really happy to have everybody joining us here today.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.